What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. I'll be doing the same thing as I did yesterday with running backs, and then I did past few weeks, just talking about some of the wide receivers that you guys have asked about the most over this week and into the future. Before we do that, though, have to start things off with the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat was since week 7. What defense is tied with the Steelers for the most fantasy points per game? The answer is actually the Miami Dolphins, who actually took over sole possession of first place after Monday night's game, and Matt Hannon was the first to get that one right. Today's stat: among the top 10 wide receivers in fantasy points this season, only one has fewer than 5 touchdowns. Who is it? All right, so the players you guys have asked about this week are Cole Beasley, T.Y. Hilton, Fulgham, and DJ Chark, who I've gone over the past few weeks, and I think I'm going to retire from this video. Nothing has changed. I'll give a very brief update, but again, things are not changing. The take is the exact same, so we're going to retire them from this video. Stop asking about them. Terry McLaurin, Brandon Aiyuk, and then the Rams wide receivers, because you want that update before the Thursday night game when they take on Patriots. So we will start off with apparently the GOAT, and that is Cole Beasley. Not usually considered a high upside player, but he has 4 games this year with over 100 yards, and he's actually the wide receiver 27 in points per game on the season, on pace for 88 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's a pretty good season for Cole Beasley. And the problem with him isn't even the ceiling, it's just that when's the ceiling coming? You know, like if you have him on your roster, you understand this. We haven't been able to accurately predict which games Beasley is going to explode for like 9 for 100 and a touchdown, right? They're kind of random. And so it's difficult starting him because sure, he can have blow up games. He can be productive, but you don't 100% know when that's going to happen. And so you are going to have those games that are more like 4 for 60. But again, he's got 4 games with over 100 yards. 3 of those games, he had 9 or more receptions. And while the floor is definitely low, he hasn't really hit the floor that often. I mean, he's got a floor of like 2 for 20, 2 for 30. But I believe he's only got like 2 games where he really hit that floor. Ultimately, he's also not the same player that he was in Dallas. I think that's the biggest thing I wanted to mention here, is that in Dallas, he's consistently getting 5 for 50, 5 for 60, 6 for 50. Like, just very medium production games, wasn't really spiking beyond that. But that hasn't been happening in Buffalo. In Buffalo, he's having these games where he goes over 100 yards and a score. He racks up 7, 8, 9, 10, even 11 receptions in games. That wasn't happening in Dallas. So he is a slightly different player now. Ultimately, though, his playoff schedule is just brutal. So if you were considering playing him in the playoffs, I'd probably hold off. Faces the Steelers this week, then the Broncos in Denver, and then the Patriots in New England. So he could have a decent game against the Patriots because he's unlikely to see the top 2 corners. But I mean, he played the Patriots earlier this season, and that was his worst game of the year. So you're probably not going there. Honestly, you're not starting Cole Beasley in the playoffs. I know this production is really nice, and maybe he's on free agency, and you're struggling at wide receiver, and you're like, is he an option? If matchups were good, like if he was playing, Arizona, if he was playing Dallas, or, these teams that we attack with wide receivers, maybe he's playing the Falcons, okay. But again, he's playing the Steelers, then in Denver, then in New England. Just not the matchups we want to attack. Next up, we've got T.Y. Hilton, and through the first 9 games of the season, he went over 53 receiving yards once. He had more than 4 receptions once, and he had 0 receiving touchdowns. Then we flip to these last 2 weeks. Well, he's posted 4 for 81 and a touchdown, and then 8 for 110 and a touchdown this last week. So I'm assuming your question in asking about him is he back? Is he the TY of old? I would have a hard time saying that. Looking at this Colts offense, they're never just going to focus on one player. They're going to rotate through the running backs. They're going to use a few different tight ends. They love their other wide receivers, especially Michael Pittman. And so I would not be able to trust him in the fantasy playoffs, especially looking at his upcoming schedule. The matchups are very difficult. This week he faces the Rams. That's brutal. He does get a really nice draw in week 15 against the Texans, before playing Pittsburgh in week 16. So you could consider him in week 15, but are you really going to? I mean, no one made the playoffs riding T.Y. Hilton. If you have T.Y. Hilton, you haven't dropped him, it's just because you have a deep bench, and I don't know, you didn't need that roster spot, maybe because your starting lineup was so good. But no one got into the fantasy semifinals with T.Y. Hilton. So for you to just throw him in there in week 15, I don't know. I mean, that would be really, really aggressive. It could pay off because he just had the really nice game against the Texans this last week, but he could easily go out there, post 4 for 40, and you'll be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have started him in the fantasy playoffs after doing nothing with him all season. So I do not believe T.Y. is back. Maybe he feels healthier now. Maybe he's gaining a connection with Rivers. But the role in the offense for T.Y. is so much different than it was when he was breaking out with Andrew Luck that I don't trust it. I don't think you should either. Like I said, we're going to do the Fulgham and DJ Chark sections quickly. So Fulgham, I've been over him, I think, the past few weeks. His value just tanks with everyone coming back, and we've seen that happen even further now with Ertz coming back. Like, first it was like, okay, Rager's back, and Sanders is back, and Goddard's back, and each time one of these guys comes back, and then Alshon, and then Ertz, it's like, all these people are back. What are you expecting from Fulgham, especially when Wentz has been the quarterback? You know, maybe it improves a little bit with Hurts, but I mean, they have Greg Ward there as well. Like, there's so many different players. You're not trusting Travis Fulgham. He has 4 targets over the last 2 weeks, 32 receiving yards over the last 4 weeks. I am retiring him from this video. You're not playing him. You're not rostering him. Do not have him on your team. I am also retiring DJ Chark from this video as well. He is an extremely talented player. He has a ton of upside, but the Jaguars are actively trying to lose football games, and it is very difficult to trust players in that scenario. They've been holding Gardner Minshew out while he's healthy, and you know what? Until Minshew is the quarterback again, I'm not playing Chark. He's got to stay on your bench. You can use him, Mike, because he does have upside. You know, he could go out there with any quarterback in the entire league and post 5 for 122 touchdowns. That can happen because of his talent. But the likelihood that that happens is so low that I don't trust it. I do not want that in my starting lineup. I want someone with a higher floor. If Minshew at any point in the fantasy playoffs comes in and plays quarterback, then we will discuss starting DJ Chark. But until that happens, I do not think that you can go there. And it really does stink, but the only Jaguars player you can trust right now is James Robinson. He has been elite this season, getting incredible volume, a very secure floor, very high upside. You can play James Robinson. You should be playing him every single week. But DJ Chark, no. Plus, he's also got some tough matchups too. He's got the Ravens, he's got the Bears in the playoffs. So again, unless Minshew's back, you're not playing him. Next up, Terry McLaurin, coming off his worst game of the season. People are wondering, should they worry about him? No. They played in Pittsburgh. What do you really expect in that spot? You can produce. A wide receiver can produce playing against the Steelers. But, like I always talk about, upside in these matchups is not technically capped. You can still hit your ceiling. But your likelihood of hitting that ceiling is much lower, and your likelihood of hitting your floor is much higher. And we saw Terry McLaurin hit his floor on Monday night. This was a bad spot, but aside from this week, he's been under 61 receiving yards once all season. He's had at least 5 receptions in 9 of 11 games. He's gone for at least 7 receptions in 7 of 11. He ranks 7th among wide receivers in targets. He's on pace for over 1,300 yards, around 95 receptions. And plus, he himself is a top 10 wide receiver talent in the league. And now he faces the 49ers, Seahawks, and Panthers in the fantasy playoffs. Do not worry about Terry McLaurin. He should be locked into your lineups in fantasy playoffs, and you should feel very good about that. Next up, we're going to have Brandon Aiyuk, and he looks very good. I mean, he honestly looks like a fantastic wide receiver, a great find for the 49ers. He has nearly a 30% target share over his last 4 games, and since week 6, he's the wide receiver 9 in fantasy points per game. That is insane. And on the season as a whole, looking at points per game, he's tied with Amari Cooper, and he's slightly ahead of Mike Evans and Terry McLaurin. So if the question is he a must start now? Honestly, I think so. I mean, you guys know the league I talk about, that the Sleeper League, 14 teams, full PPR. I said I'm benching Miles Sanders this week. Of course, Antonio Gibson also gets hurt, so that kind of stinks for my team. I do not know yet exactly how long he'll be out. It didn't look great, so I'm not sure he's going to play this week. If he's out, I have to play Brandon Aiyuk. But even if he's playing, I am playing Brandon Aiyuk every week moving forward. My decision will probably come down to Gabriel Davis or Chase Edmonds. I don't even remember who the rest of my bench is. But I'll have options, don't you worry. But I'm starting going forward. I think that this is such a creative offense that even if you're looking at this and you're saying, but Nick Mullins, is the quarterback. But look who the coaching staff is. Look at who they have been able to produce with in the past. I mean, this staff got very, very mediocre players. When they had all of Kittle was out, Debo was out, the running backs are hurt, the quarterback is hurt, Aiyuk is hurt. They've got no one. They've still been able to produce on offense because of how good of a coaching staff they have, how good they are at game planning and just getting the ball into the hands of their best players. And now that they have Debo and Aiyuk back, they're getting the ball into their hands and they're producing because they are phenomenal talent. And so looking ahead, I'm starting going forward. He does have a tough matchup against the football team this week, but then he gets the Cowboys in the semifinals. He gets the Cardinals in the championship, so they should run a ton of plays in that matchup. That'll be really, really nice for him. So you're 100% playing in weeks 15 and week 16. It's a much more difficult decision this week if you've got, two wide receivers and then like a flex running back or wide receiver that you really, really do want to play over him, that they are really good players. You don't have to play Aiyuk. You don't have to play anyone facing the Washington defense. But weeks 15, week 16, I would probably make it a point to get him into your lineup. The last thing you guys asked about is to go over the Rams wide receivers. I'm only going to go over Woods and Kupp. I'd be very surprised if you're starting Reynolds or like Van Jefferson in the fantasy playoffs. I'm thinking it's only Woods and Kupp. But you guys asked about it because it's happening on Thursday and our wide receiver breakdown doesn't happen until the Friday video. So I think that their role later in the season has been really, really nice, especially Woods. Like if you remember last year, Woods starts a little bit low, and then to end the season, he was just an absolute monster, just a huge target hog. It's almost happening again. I don't really have an explanation for that, but he's been producing really well like these last 3 weeks, double-digit targets in every week, averaging over 12 targets per game over these 3 weeks, and he's up to 5 touchdowns on the season now, which we know is something he's struggled with in the past. And then we flip over to Kupp as well. I mean, he's showing the same thing. Really nice ceiling, really nice floor. He's averaging 7.5 receptions per game over the last 5 weeks. So no, it's not a great time to play the Patriots, but these guys are producing. Now, if we look at it, Patriots win 45-0. Absolutely dominant effort. Few things I want to note there. One, Bill Belichick is elite with time to prepare. Okay, he's one of the best coaches in the league, probably the best coach in the league. You give him time to prepare, he's going to put together a really good game plan. But this game's on Thursday, and so you kind of have to throw that out. Obviously, he's still going to put together a good game plan, but you're limiting that sort of advantage that he has. Second, Bill is elite when he's facing a rookie quarterback. So we look at their dominant effort last week. That doesn't mean that like the Patriots defense is back to what it was last season. He's just really good at just confusing rookie quarterbacks and just dominating them basically. I mean, he's got a really good track record against them. So don't think that, oh no, now the Patriots are what they were last season. You can't play anyone against them. No, you can still play people against the Patriots defense. So those are the positives for Kupp and for Woods. But there are also obvious negatives. Like Woods is very likely going to see a lot of Stephon Gilmore, and he's pretty unlikely to win that matchup. And remember what we always talk about with players facing the Patriots. Their defense is not even close to what it was last season, but they limit opponent play volume so much that it becomes much more difficult to post a ceiling game. especially for receivers facing Gilmore, because you can beat him on a few plays. Like, he's not like a robot. Like, he can be beat, but you're not going to do it consistently, and you're much less likely to do it over time when you have fewer attempts. Like, if they run 80 plays, yeah, you're going to have some plays where Gilmore gets beat and they can find him open. But if you run 55 plays or 60 plays, well, now you have fewer opportunities, and Gilmore is still elite. So if you're only winning a small percentage of those opportunities, and the total opportunities are down as well, well, now your upside, your chance of hitting that upside is much lower. So Woods can have a good game, but it's much less likely, and his floor is a lot lower than it was in other matchups. Plus, you add in that, the total in this game is 44.5. That's pretty low. We see that both these two are struggling with touchdowns this season. They have 7 combined touchdowns through the air, and so that's obviously not ideal when you have that going up against a defense that's going to limit your plays, going to limit your touchdowns. So honestly, with these two, it comes down to who you have. You're definitely starting them in weeks 15 and week 16 facing the Jets and the Seahawks. But if you've got really nice options, it's similar to Aiyuk. Like, this week is tough. And so if you've got 2 wide receiver ones and then a flex option you like at running back or wide receiver ahead of these two, well, don't think that you have to play them. But also don't think that you can't play them. If these are your best options and you look at it and you're like, okay, but the projection for my next best is like 4 fewer points, well, okay, then just go with Woods or Kupp. They're still talented. They're still going to have a very large target share on their offense. And this team is still going to score points. Even if the points are fewer than usual, even if the plays are fewer than usual, they're still going to score. And the Patriots defense is not what it was in the past. So honestly, just check the rankings. Remember, the rankings, everything, sports betting, everything is free for the rest of the season. TheFantasyFootballAdvice.com. Whenever I release the week 14 now rankings, go over there, check them out, see where Woods and Kupp are ranked compared to all the other players in your team, and adjust accordingly from there. Again, I just want you to know their chance of hitting their ceiling is lower than it usually is, but that doesn't mean it's 0%. It just means that it's less likely they'll hit their ceiling. But if you need to play them in the flex, they still do have upside. So I hope that was helpful for a lot of you. We still have the running back and the wide receiver start-sit videos on Thursday and on Friday. So if you have more questions on players, they might be answered in those videos. But that's the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button? And how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.